Hello everyone. So the next session, we are almost done with the world history. I mean, we have one more important topics and some few events in the 20th century and all is your Cold War. Okay. So the period, as we know, after your World War II, we have two superpowers getting emerged. One in the form of USA, capitalistic one; the other one, USSR, a communistic country. So the ideological difference between these two developed into the Cold War, 1945 till 1991. Okay. Now, a sequence of events after your World War II, 1939 to 45, led to the disintegration till the disintegration of USSR in 1991. USSR disintegration in 1991. Okay, the fall of communism, you can say, the fall of communism. Uh, some say, in fact, the fall of Stalinism. Okay, what and also. So two superpowers, USA and USSR, got emerged, and thus a bipolar world. Earlier, you have domination of Europe. All these points we did discuss. Okay, but still in a session form. Okay, and now you have a bipolar world. Bipolar world got emerged. Okay. Both competed for hegemony in terms of economy, science and technology, military aspects, polity, acquiring of territories, or I mean, it's not like colonial state of policy. It's like having a control, okay, over those satellite states, over those satellite states and all. So a fight for hegemony developed. Okay, and finally, US emerged as the victorious. US emerged as the hegemony. Okay, so 20th century, if you see, it can be divided into three distinct phases. The first phase from 1900 to 1945, where we have witnessed the two wars, the World War I and World War II. Okay, one you have from 14 till 19, then 2 39 till 45. Okay, the first phase. The second phase, that is from 45 till 1991, where you have dissolution of Soviet Union, USSR got disintegrated, and also the period of Cold War, the second phase. Third phase, that is you have from 1991 till 21st century, the present events which are actually happening now. That is emergence of you have US hegemony, the most important point after the Cold War got ended. Globalization, countries got integrated in terms of economy, political aspects, culture, okay, and international institutions, basic international institutions and all. So that's how you can characterize the entire, you can say, 21st century, the 21st century, and 20th century, and 20th century too. Okay, next, meaning, or you can say, what exactly is the Cold War? It's a political and a military tension. It's a political and a military tension between the powers. Okay, one got classified as your Western Bloc. The Western Bloc, I mean, you can say, headed by US, and the other is your Eastern Bloc. So political and military tensions, you can say, this is in the form of your arms race. Missiles got developed and all. It's your arms race and all. Okay, so the main military wing, in fact, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was headed by US and its allies, or the Western powers. Okay, Warsaw Pact was the USSR, or the Eastern Bloc, headed by Soviet Union. All the East European nations, with USSR being the head. You have the military wing, military pact called Warsaw Pact, opposite to NATO. Okay, it was cold. I mean, in fact, it almost reached to the so-called hot war during Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Okay, it was called because there was no large-scale fighting. Cold War, in fact, it was not a direct confrontation between the two superpowers. It was actually using all the other countries, and where and all they can have their own sphere of influence. They acquired for sphere of influences and all. They acquired for small states, because these small states would be used to attack or provoke US. From the same way, provoking of small states, acquiring the small states in the Eastern Europe, so that Russia can be irritated. Okay, and these smaller powers also, the smaller countries also, they also got joined because they need money for economical aid, for military aid, for support system. That's how the relationship between US and the smaller countries and all, the relationship between USSR and satellite states got developed. So everywhere you have the sphere of influence of the major superpowers getting developed. Okay, two major wars. I mean, Korean War 50 to 53. Vietnam wars. We have two Vietnam wars, two major Vietnam wars. Again, you have the division between North and South. The same even applied to North Korea and South Korea. Though Vietnam got united, both the northern part and southern part got divided, but still Korea is still, even till today, you have it as undivided. Okay. Next up, you have the ideological differences: the communistic bloc led by USSR and the capitalistic bloc led by USA, or capitalism and also your democracy. Democracy, you can say. Okay, Europe, you can say again the major area of influence of where it got extended is Europe, and Europe, because of that, Europe got divided again into two blocks: the Eastern Europe, the Eastern bloc of Europe, which is supported or which is aided by USSR, pro-communist; the Western Europe, supported by the USA countries and all, pro-capitalistic and democratic. It was neither a direct confrontation nor did peace exist. There was always, you can say, even when it comes to the case of India, you can say Kashmir is also a pawn in the hands of both US and USSR. Afghanistan, invasion of Afghanistan was also, an act of a Cold War event and all. So Asia, you have Africa, you have mostly, you can say, Europe. It was not a direct confrontation between these two countries. They did not have face-to-face confrontation and all. Okay. Next, the rival powers attacked each other. The methodology. What were the determinants, or what was the methodology of Cold War and all? You can say it was propaganda. Via propaganda, that communism would, you can say, spread through the entire countries and all. Communism would wipe out all the most, and you can say. On the other hand, you have communist countries and all saying that the rich becomes richer and the poor becomes poorer concept. You have more divide of rich and poor in capitalistic countries and all. But communist states and all, you have the principle of equality. Okay. And on the other hand, economical measures, giving and helping hand for the smaller nations who are actually in dire need of economic help. And with the great policy of non-cooperation. The non-cooperation was actually between US and USSR. But all the other smaller nations and all, they did have an helping hand. Okay. So, in spite of the several thaws in the sense, you have some relaxation in the tensions. Relaxation in tensions. During the period of 45 till 1991, it was not a continued tension. It was not continued tension for the entire period. As the head of the country, head of the states gets changed. For example, after Stalin in Russia, you have Khrushchev coming up. You have after Khrushchev, you have Brezhnev. Okay, then you have Gorbachev, Michael Gorbachev. Okay, so Khrushchev and Gorbachev policies were actually with respect to maintaining a peaceful, cordial relationship with USA, but that was not the same with respect to the other premiers who were there of the communistic party heads. The same way when you have Truman, his policies were more aggressive. In fact, the main reason. One of the major reasons you can say for the development of Cold War was, you can say, the role of political leaders. The role of political leaders, be it in terms of, from the case of, just a second. You can say from USA, you can say Harry Truman's policies of European Recovery Program or Marshall Plan. They say that all these were, the later government documents and all, they reveal that though it was intended to development of the Eastern European nations, but in reality, Truman did aspire to contain communism. His main policy was actually to contain communism and thus to weaken up the USSR. Many historians actually blame Stalin for the kind of, you can say, for the tense relationship between US and USSR. But to an extent, true, the kind of policies what Stalin did, you can say, Stalin's expansion of communism to other states and all, that was the major reason accepted. But there were many other documents also which said that Stalin only wanted to spread communism only within, you can say, only among the USSR satellite states. He did not want communism to get spread in the entire world. That's how some historians say and all. Okay, but some say the NATO development. On contrary, you have a Marshall Plan. So US has to be blamed. Okay, some say USSR has to be blamed, but the modern view, you can say, both are to be responsible. Both the countries, USA and USSR, are to be made responsible. So, in spite of the several thaws, that is, in spite of relaxation of the tensions between, the so-called tensions continued till 1991, that is, till the disintegration of USSR happened. Okay, and all the international developments after 1945, most of the international events, for example, Cuban Missile Crisis, the Korean War, the invasion of Afghanistan, Vietnam War, the Suez Canal crisis, okay, the arms race, the nuclear, the kind of nuclear treaties, for example, non-proliferation treaty. You have nuclear suppliers group, NSG, Australian group, Webinar agreement, different nuclear agreements and all. You can say with respect to Hungarian crisis, 1956. Okay, all the major events entirely got influenced because of the kind of confrontation between US and USSR. It happened during this particular phase of Cold War. Okay, they all follow. They took shape under the shadow of Cold War. Okay. Next, major reasons as we come for the causes. So, for mains answer type and all, it's difference of principle. That is difference of ideology. As I said, the ideology played the major role. One communistic, the other capitalistic or the liberal democratic states and all. And the first, you can say, ever since, you can say, after the Russian Revolution in 1917, you can say Russia became the first communistic state, and that was seen, not in a very optimistic manner by the other countries and all. It was always with suspicion that most capitalistic states viewed it upon. Okay, and the major suspicion or mistrust was actually that communism would spread to the other entire world, the other countries and all. Okay, so you have capitalistic states, UN, Britain, France. They in fact sending troops. If you could remember the polar bear expedition and all. Okay, they after the World War I, they have sent troops to Russia in 1918 to help the anti-communism and all. Okay, though communism won the civil war, but Stalin, who came to power in 29, he convinced that there would be one more attempt. There would be definitely one more attempt by the capitalistic countries or Western powers to destroy communism, and that was the major reason. In fact, the mistrust also got developed. For example, Truman, he did not disclose the idea of atomic bomb. Russia felt that it would gain some territories after the World War II has been happened after Japan's surrender. The islands like Sakhalin or the other islands it thought of it taking over. It did not happen in reality. So the mistrust got developed between the Western powers and Russia, though Russia was on the Allied side. Okay, the German invasion of Russia in 1941 proved him right. That is, the Western powers, you can say the Nazi ideology as well as the fascist ideology they were against communism. Though Russia and Germany, they went for a secret pact, for a non-aggression pact, but still the main intention, or the ideology of Nazis was they were against communism. Okay, so the next reason you can say, after the ideology, Stalin's foreign policy. As I said, the three views, the traditional view, then you have the modern, you can say, US being blamed, US has to be responsible. The third view, the modernist view, both are to be blamed. Stalin's foreign policy, definitely yes. You can say, after Germany got collapsed, after the disarmament of Germany and all, he occupied as much as possible German territory and also the entire East European nations and all. He acquired land from countries like Finland, Poland, Romania and all. Okay, so the West started believing that Stalin's main aim is to occupy these territories was to spread communism and all. Okay, so you can see the entire policy. He was industries and all fine, but okay. These are capitalism versus communism. You have a topic, in fact, in your ideologies, the political ideologies. You have communism, the socialism, the capitalism, and all. But okay, free market economy. You can say, the wealth of nations. One important person, Adam Smith, the propounder of, you can say, Capital Smith. You can say communism. You can say it's state controlled. In fact, in communism, they aspire, as per Marx theory, it's for a stateless society. The state will be controlled, state would be there controlling everything in a socialism, in a socialistic state. But socialism will lead to a communistic state. Okay, so with the state also wiping out, and the power would be in the hands of the workers. That is, proletariats. Okay, that's how it has been. Communist Marx has he gave his philosophy. Thomas Hobbes, all Paul Science. You can say Thomas Hobbes, a great proponent of again capitalism and all. If you see even Adam Smith's theory, you can see he said about something called the invincible hand. Okay, invincible hand in the market. Which will automatically determine the prices. The supply and demand both will be determined as per what requirements the market wants, and that is called as your invincible hand. Invincible hand. Okay, so who determines the price? People. Again, supply, people, the demand, people. But here you have everything being controlled by the government. It is state. Okay, and this word, the class struggle, haves and have nots, the government regulation and all. In fact, it was he openly mentioned about, you can say, the class struggle, that is between people who have not. These proletariats, they have to wage a war, that is violent means, and that's how they have to overthrow the bourgeois class and all. Okay, so it is going to be a working class revolution. Okay, even communism has got changed. I mean, you can say Lenin's communism is different. Stalin's communism has got different. When it goes to Mao, it got changed into Maoism. Okay, that's how you have Mao. Mao openly tells that the power flows from the barrel of the gun. Violence is must. Okay, next one. Okay, third reason. I mean, you can say clashes of interest of classes. I mean, the communism, they actually, I mean, they wanted, you can say, private wealth being ended. But in capitalism, it's free. I mean, see, you can see democracy and capitalism will always go hand in hand. Democracy and capitalism, they go hand in hand. Okay, you have free market here. Okay, you have skill. The one reason why US is master in terms of economy, you can say why it got developed, is because any talent, any skill, any new innovation, and all, that actually have, I mean, they are more prosperous in a free market area, which is capitalism and all. But in a communism, you will not have innovation, you will not have major discoveries. Okay, you will not have a free hand to do what you want. Only when you have free hand, only when you are not restricted, that's I mean, then only you can see development happening. That applies even for countries, that applies even to real life too. Okay, that's what they say. They say that is what we even envisioned in our polity, in our constitution. It is liberty, which means having freedom without restrictions, without any restrictions. And this is important. Liberty is must for the fullest development of the individual, for the fullest development of an individual. Okay, and this was possible. This was already successful in a democratic countries and all. In China, you had many times a lot of clashes. They said that, I mean, they wanted the Tiananmen Square incident, the Tiananmen Square massacre and all. They wanted asking for democracy. You can see the Arab Spring and all. It was for the democratic movements. A lot of democratic movements did happen. Okay, next, Cold War was followed. The fourth reason, you can say, it was as a defensive approach rather than an offensive approach. Both did not go, I mean, direct attacks and all. So it was used as a defensive approach using the other pawns, that is the other countries and all. The major intention is to preserve one's own political system, okay, and you can say it was the other's political system would not impact these and all. The two powers, they tried to create as many as buffer states. Okay, wordings are important. If you could remember the words and all, you could write up the answer and all. So these buffer states, or you can say these spheres of influence, both the countries, both the superpowers, they try to develop. Okay, fifth reason, you can say UN did get failed. I mean, UN was successful. Last session we did see about the success of UN and all, but UN was, I mean, it was not successful in controlling, you can say, the tensions between these two superpowers, US and USSR and all. Lack of confidence of the major, they did not believe both you. I mean, you can say US, neither US nor USSR, they believed in United Nations to provide a solution, because it might be because of League of Nations already in an international institute getting failed. Okay, next, lack of impartiality in functioning of UN, lack of powers available. Okay, and all these, and more importantly, both are veto countries, both are P5 members. Okay, so it was controlled to an extent, we can say. Okay, next. You can say, I mean, there is a wonderful document, you can say, the creation of United Nations and the start of Cold War. Both started. In fact, UN creation, it's 1945, Washington DC headquarters. The Cold War starting also was in 1945. That's how you can link it. Okay. Next, sixth reason, you can say role of leaders. Very important. Okay. When Roosevelt was the president, I mean, until you can say you have Eisenhower, you have Truman, Eisenhower. Same when you see, US was actually when you have Roosevelt, he was trusting Stalin to an extent. He was more inclined to trust Stalin. But Britain actually was not on the other sections. Britain was very, cautious about how would USSR would react. Okay, so and that was the reason why Roosevelt. You can see even from Lend-Lease and all, Lend-Lease Act also, right, US gave weapons to Russia. Okay, when he gave arms, raw material, food supplies, that is under your Lend-Lease Act, 1941. 1941. Okay. But after his death in 45, you can say the things got changed. The tense relations got slowly developed. Okay, and one reason you can say the other presidents of USA, they changed their mindset is because of Stalin's intention also got changed. He tried to occupy as many territories, be it in case of Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, Finland, and all. He wanted to occupy as many territories, and most of the East European states and all. And the fear of these presidents and all was the main intention of occupation of territories would be definitely to spread out the communism. Okay, so you can say the meeting, the famous meeting, Yalta Conference. Okay, next, this alarmed the Western powers, and President Truman, he was completely suspicious of Stalin's motive. Truman was entirely suspicious of Stalin's motive. It did not even work out with these two people. After US, you can say after Roosevelt, Truman, Harry Truman, his motive, that was Truman did not even, you can say he did not even inform about the planning of atomic bombs, the dropping of atomic bombs on Japan, Okay, in fact, as I said earlier, Japan was almost ready to surrender. Okay, it was not necessary to drop, but the main intention of Truman attacking Japan was to make USSR, was to give a threat call for USSR. Okay, as I said, many opined that it was a warning to Stalin. It was a warning to Stalin. Okay, Stalin was also not known of the information, so this actually developed the mistrust. Okay, it was also not known of the information of the existence of atomic bomb, but Churchill was informed. Winston Churchill, he was informed. Okay, after Churchill, you have Clement Attlee. Okay, the Prime Minister when India got independence. Okay, Stalin's request that Russia should get a share in the occupation of Japan. That is because Russia lost some territory after the Russo-Japan War in 1905. Okay, so Russia was expecting some territory, but that was rejected. Okay, finally, you can say you have two unequal powers. West had the atom bomb, USSR did not have. So this developed later during the Cold War event, that is your arms race. Arms race got developed. Okay, Stalin was also suspicious of USA and Britain during the Second World because they delayed the invasion of France. They did not even open up the Western Front for many years when Germany was continuously attacking on the Eastern Front. It kept on asking to open the other side, the Western Front and all, but it was delayed. It did not even open till 1943. You can say. Okay. Next one. So Stalin argued that peaceful coexistence. You can say the peaceful coexistence. In fact, when you have Nikita Khrushchev, his speech of peaceful coexistence was actually very famous. During that time, they developed some thought. During this period, they developed some thought. Okay, Stalin's death, 1953. After that, you have Nikita Khrushchev. After that, you have some thoughts getting developed. Okay, peaceful coexistence with the West is impossible until a final victory over capitalism. This statement actually provoked. And then you have Churchill's statement also being given, where you have the famous slogan, or you can say famous dialogue, you can say Iron Curtain got established now because of the provocating statement made by Stalin that you can have only peace when you have a victory over capitalism. So, you can say in opposite, you have Churchill's statement also. With that, you have Iron Curtain getting started. Okay, Truman Doctrine also, the main reason, Harry Truman, he was also responsible. You can say for the major, because his policies like Marshall Plan, European Recreation Program, you can say NATO, okay. All these plans are also were incited to attack USSR. Okay. Domino effect. This was, you can say, one after you have Eisenhower. okay, US president, okay, he feared that, you can say seventh reason, he feared that if one country got affected by communism, the domino effect and all, the other country would automatically fall. The other countries would automatically fall. That is called your domino effect. One country getting affected, automatically all the other countries would fall into the line of communism. That's what the figure of Eisenhower. So communism was a threat to the governments of capitalistic countries. The leaders of these countries, they feared communism, and especially when you have political instability, communist ideology would always be a leaning. Okay, so Eisenhower, he feared out the domino effect. After Truman, you will have Eisenhower in US. Okay, where if one country was allowed to become communist, automatically the neighboring countries also would follow the suit. This is the domino effect. USSR attacking Korea. I mean, all these are communist. Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, the Indo-Lavos, Indochina. Okay, they once one country falls, automatically all the other countries would face this. This is called the domino theory. Okay, next, thus threatening the capitalism, democracy. They both are one. Okay, and US interests and all. So it was this fear of domino effect. US in participation in Vietnam War was the major reason. US supporting, you can say, Vietnam. That time you have North and South Vietnam. South was supported. The South was supported. Okay, so US invasion, or you can say US involvement in Vietnam War, was majorly because of the fear of capitalism being thrown away, or the fear of communism being wiped into these states, and that's a huge loss for US interests. US interests, be it economy, be it military. Okay, so domino effect was the major reason. And then you can say eighth reason, the end of Grand Alliance. Grand Alliance, that is, you have USA, USSR, and Britain. That is during your World War II, the end of World War II. You have, I mean, during the World War II, you have Grand Alliance being established to fight against the Nazi Germany and all. Okay, but they became enemies after the Second World War is done. So you have now the end of Grand Alliance. Okay, Hitler was defeated, German got surrendered, and all. Relationship between US and USSR became more uneasy. It was not easy with respect to sharing of the territories, with respect to ideologies, all this and all. So between these time, 1943 to 45, you have Roosevelt of US, Churchill, and Stalin meeting at three conferences: Tehran Conference, Yalta and Potsdam conferences and all. So the Tehran Conference, 1943, the initial conference, the Tehran main conference and all. This is with respect to after the reconstruction of Europe once the World War is over. Okay, that is after the defeat of Germany, how the reconstruction of Europe has to happen. The main conference is your Tehran Conference, initial conference, you can say. They agreed for USSR maintaining its sphere of influence over the Eastern Europe at the Tehran Conference. Okay, and simultaneously, USA and UK on the western side. Okay, Yalta Conference we discussed in 1945. That is with respect to, I can say, dealing with respect to Germany. What should be the situation of Germany and all. Held in Russia. It was before the World War II. That is when victory was almost. It was almost clear that the Allied powers would win. Okay, the leaders Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill. After Churchill, you have Clement Attlee. Okay, Roosevelt followed by Truman followed by Eisenhower. We'll see the presidents and all. Okay, Stalin followed by Nikita Khrushchev. Russia, Nikita Khrushchev. Okay, next. So this is the plan. Okay, I mean they are still, you can see, one famous cartoon. You can see the cartoon. I mean the pieces, the territories and all, whether you will be taking this Scrabble game and all, whether this has been satisfied or not. I mean, Harry Truman. So I mean, later you can say he would bring in a lot of conflicts. Okay, Stalin, same again. I mean, he wanted the entire concepts and all. Okay, next. USSR to help, if at all. I mean, it was initially accepted actually by USA that if I need to help, I mean, if a war to be waged against Japan and all, one context that it wanted to have access with respect to the Sakhalin Island, which is actually very rich in resources, oil rich. Okay, so on the condition that Russia received the whole of Sakhalin Island and some of Manchuria, it was occupied. It was taken back in 1905. Half of Sakhalin Island was taken by Japan after the 1904 Russian war. Okay, this particular area, this one, rich in oil resources. Okay, but it was not actually given. I mean, you can say the entire occupation of Russia and all, it was not accepted. Okay, Stalin promised the conduct of free elections in Eastern Europe, which is famous, you can say, it went off the declaration of limited Europe. In Poland, it went on, but still, according to this, the three allied powers assisted the liberating countries of Europe to establish democratic institutions. It did not happen. The issue of Poland, the kind of involvement of Stalin on Poland's territory and all, it worried. It made the US and Britain worried, actually. Okay, Russia had set up a provisional government, communistic government there, driving out all the Germans. It was agreed that some members of the Poland government who were in exile, they were actually, they were immediately joined into the communist government. People were brought from the exile members countries and all, and they formed the communist government. So Poland issue, you can say how exactly to break and all. You can say one, you have Britain, Russia, USA, and this is your Poland, and this is your Poland. Okay, so the demand that of Poland, Stalin, that Poland gets all the German territory east of the river Oder and Nisi. Okay, you can say the famous. This is called the borderline, Oder and Nisir line. Okay. In fact, Germany was reduced to its territory. What and all has been there in the east of the territory earlier to the east of Germany, it was reduced to far western countries. So it reduced more. I mean, the German territory was reduced. Okay, but this was rejected. Actually, this plan of Stalin was actually rejected by both Britain and USA. Okay. Next, UN should be formed. This was one more at the Alta conference. This was discussed that UN should be formed to replace the erstwhile League of Nations. Germany was to be divided in zones. In fact, it was at the Yalta conference that Germany has to be divided into the 4 zones under the control of Russia, America, and British. Okay. Later, France was also added. So 4 zones, 4 countries. 4 zones, 4 countries. Okay. Berlin should also be divided again. Berlin, you have again Berlin being divided. West Berlin and East Berlin. And in 1961, you have the Berlin Wall. So at the Yalta conference, you have one more point that Berlin has to be divided. Okay, but major signs of trouble over the issue of Poland. Okay, as we've seen earlier. Okay, Stalin continued with an aggressive policy of expanding, occupying territories with respect to more communist influence and all. This caused a major irritation for Roosevelt and Churchill. Okay, they had differences over democracy. For Stalin, it was to be communism and representation of the working class. That's what communism tells. But Roosevelt saw democracy in a very different way. They're giving importance to political parties and all. And if you see communistic parties, it's a one-party system. It's a one-party system and all. Okay. Next, Potsdam Conference. This was Germany is over. Now, this is with respect to Germany paying back the war reparations, how the territories has to be divided and all. The conference was held in occupied Germany part with witness participation of Stalin, Truman, and Churchill. Later, he was replaced by Attlee. Okay, you can say Truman, Stalin, and Churchill. You can say it was agreed that Germans should pay reparations to the USSR. In fact, the prisoners of the war, many people, since USSR suffered the maximum damage, that too from Nazi Germany. Okay, and Germany would be disarmed. Same thing also happened to Japan disarmament. Okay, Nazi party was disbanded and all the Nazis were gone for Nuremberg trials and all. We have discussed this. Territory annexed by Germany was taken back, including Sudetenland. This is of Czechoslovakia. Okay, Austria also got divided, and you can say, and the western parts of Poland. So that's how it got divided. And Germany and Austria both were divided into 4 occupation zones. This was agreed at Yalta, implemented in Potsdam Conference. This was agreed at Yalta Conference, but implemented in your Potsdam Conference. Odyssean line, as I said, the division line, in fact, which reduced the border, which reduced the territory area. Okay, it was a temporary, but at the Treaty of Final Settlement with respect to Germany in 1990, and gave a proper standing with respect to the boundary of Germany. Okay, so you can say size of Germany was reduced to 3/4 of what was done in 1937. 3/4 of the border areas were done. Okay. Next, Potsdam Conference. Stalin was not informed. This was a major reason of US planning for we can say the nuclear bomb, and the bomb was dropped 2 days after the Potsdam Conference in 45. Okay, this is the Odyssean line. This is Germany. You can say this was the early, after World War II part. This particular line, Oder River, this was divided. Okay, territory, this was given back. The entire territory, this was there. Okay, this part, this yellow color, this was now given over to Poland. Okay, And this was actually, it lost after 1945. It gave away to, I mean, this is your famous Danzig port. It was given away to Russia. This is Russia. Russia. It was given to Russia. Okay. And you can see how much territory it lost. Germany was completely lost. This is your Niger River. The Niger River. Okay. This is your Oder River. Let me erase it once. The Niger and your Oder River. Okay. This was erstwhile before 1945 Germany. This is given to Poland after 1945. This is given to USSR. Okay. Next one. Next. German territory over the Oder-Neisse line had been occupied by Russian troops. It was administered by Polish government, as we've seen. It was a temporary one. It was a temporary one till 1990, you can say. Okay. Communism established in Eastern Europe, and post-Potsdam Conference, you can say, Russians kept on increasing in the satellite states of, that is, your Eastern European states. It took place in Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Albania. I mean, they were under the control, you can say. Okay. So you can see war of words started happening, but never went for a direct confrontation. Okay. And finally, in 1946, Stalin gave the infamous speech that you will have a peaceful coexistence only when you would win over capitalism. This meant that future wars were inevitable. He was ready for a war. Okay. And contrary to this, Churchill gave his famous Iron Curtain speech in 1946, where he said that now Iron Curtain has descended over Europe. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of the clashes between USA and USSR. And Churchill was, and because of this statement he made, Churchill was criticized by Stalin as a warmonger. Churchill was called as a warmonger by Stalin. Okay. So the most significant event, the Iron Curtain, we have to see Iron Curtain gets descended, Iron Curtains get ended and all, to see that in your Cold War events and all. The famous Iron Curtain speech, I mean, you can say Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister, he gave in response to Stalin's speech in 46, that is peaceful coexistence speech. It referred to the boundary dividing the Europe. And this existed till 1991. Okay. On the eastern side, you have the CM, I mean, you can say Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, which later became, I mean, you can say the military pact was your Warsaw Pact, while on the western side, you have, European Community and your NATO. Berlin Wall became one of the symbols and important event of your Iron Curtain. Iron Curtain has descended. It had started, now it has descended after Berlin Wall construction. Berlin Wall construction. All these events we have to see. And finally, non-interaction between these two states, be it in terms of economy, be it in terms of trade, political relation. Political, obviously, it will not. You have democracy, you have communism there. People to people contact was stopped. Okay. So finally, the only democratic state that is in Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia, when it also became communist, the Iron Curtain became firm. It became confirmed that yes, now we have to take actions with respect to stopping of this communism being spread. Czechoslovakia was a democratic country, but when it also became a communistic, you can say communistic government was involved, was established in Czechoslovakia, Iron Curtain got confirmed. Okay, and Stalin even prevented even the Eastern European nations also. In contrary for the Western Europe nations, you have Marshall aid. Stalin gave. We can say Russia gave Molotov plan, that is economical aid and all. Okay, he in fact even stopped Czechoslovakia from acquiring Marshall plan or the European Recovery Program of Truman. He stopped Czechoslovakia from acquiring it. Okay, further events like Western Berlin blockade 1948 and Berlin Wall construction, they are the significant events or examples of how the Iron Curtain got established in Europe. And when the Iron Curtain finally fell with the collapse of Soviet Union, that is end of Cold War in 1991. All these events, the Berlin blockade, the Berlin airlift, Berlin Wall construction, a Cuban Missile Crisis, nuclear armament, we have to see in the events of Cold War. In the next sessions and all, we'll be seeing over it. Thank you.